Good morning. The Committee on Science, Space, and Technology will now come to order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 2F and House Rule 11, recorded votes may be postponed. Today, we'll meet to consider H.R. 5089, the Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025, and I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Thank you all for joining us at this markup. We're here today to consider H.R. 5089, the Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025, a bill to strengthen American forecasting and emergency preparedness. Given the tragic flooding event in my home state of Texas in July, on the 4th of July to be exact, and with your hurricane season now in full swing, this legislation cannot come at a more crucial time. This bill updates and modernizes the Weather Research and Forecasting Innovation Act of 2017, also known as the Weather Act, which was the first comprehensive weather authorization in more than 20 years. There have been extensive discussions regarding this legislation across the aisle and between the chambers. After reflecting on those conversations, we are now considering H.R. 5089, a bill built on the strong foundation of the measure that passed the House with overwhelming support last Congress. By taking up this proven framework, we are establishing a clear and united House position heading into potential negotiations with the United States Senate. I look forward to working with Senator Cruz to ensure that Texans and all Americans are best prepared for severe weather events. Since 2023, this committee has held multiple hearings on the Weather Act of 2017 to evaluate what worked well and identify areas for improvement. We have heard some tremendous success stories thanks to the Weather Act of 2017. Hurricane track predictions have advanced by more than 10%, and tornado warning lead times have increased by over 10 minutes. In July, National Weather Service provided a 201-minute lead time for Kerr County, Texas, warning of the imminent flash flooding on the Guadalupe River. Yet, despite that warning, many precious lives were tragically lost, including 27 campers and counselors at Camp Mystic. This heartbreaking event underscores the urgent need to strengthen the connection between forecasts and the timely flow of information to the public. Today's bill equips NOAA with the tools needed to carry out its vital mission of protecting lives and property by bolstering our emergency preparedness. It does so in two key ways. First, by improving our ability to forecast severe weather, and second, by enhancing how quickly and effectively that we can communicate when emergencies are approaching. Every citizen should understand that an EF3 tornado warning entails the severity of a flash flood warning, and most importantly, how to respond appropriately. Excellence in weather forecasting also carries real economic benefits. Accurate forecasts support better crop production, guide the safest and most fuel-efficient flight paths, and provide reliable outlooks for critical points of commerce like Port Houston. Additionally, we learned about the value of granting NOAA greater access to commercial weather data generated by both direct measurements and space-based remote sensing instruments on commercial satellites. This novel approach to obtaining significantly more data was established as a pilot program, enabling NOAA to cautiously test a new direction without wasting taxpayer money. The 2017 Weather Act's provisions, which enable NOAA to use commercial data, proved highly successful according to stakeholder feedback. This legislation builds on that success by broadening NOAA's authority to harness new and innovative technologies that provide more data sources than ever before. Discussions emphasized the need to address evolving challenges like flash flooding, atmospheric rivers, storm surges, and aviation weather. Together, these provisions put NOAA on the strongest path toward a new golden age of science and toward fulfilling its most important mission, and that is to protect life and property. They also strengthen America's global competitiveness and forecasting accuracy and effectiveness. I want to thank former Chairman Lucas and Ranking Member Lofgren for their hard work on this legislation. This is a fiscally responsible bill that prioritizes weather forecasting, and I look forward to moving it through Congress and seeing it signed into law by President Trump. I would now like to recognize the ranking member for 5 minutes for her opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairman Babin. I want to thank my fellow bill sponsor, former Chairman Frank Lucas. Today, the committee is considering the Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025. The reauthorization includes 18 component bills that have been led by both Democrats and Republicans, all in service of sustaining and bolstering the life-saving work of the National Weather Service. In the last Congress, we passed the Weather Act out of the House, but unfortunately, although we tried in our bicameral negotiations, the Senate failed to act. I'd like to say to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers, the time is now to finish the job and make this bill a law. Back in 2017, during the first Trump administration, the Science Committee came together on a bipartisan basis to develop and enact the first comprehensive weather policy legislation in more than 2 decades. That legislation helped accelerate innovation in weather forecasting tools and products and strengthened the collaboration and cooperation among all stakeholders in the weather enterprise. The legislation before us today continues to advance policies to strengthen the weather enterprise and ensure that NOAA has the tools, the capabilities, and the workforce to continue to save lives and protect property as climate change drives more frequent and more severe extreme weather events. Every one of the many important provisions in this legislation was developed thoughtfully with input and feedback from NOAA as well as external stakeholders. I'll highlight a few, and know many of our colleagues will have the opportunity to call attention to other important parts of this legislation. Democrats and Republicans are all in agreement that federally funded research is integral to accurate weather forecasting as well as effective public safety measures. One effectuates the other. The Weather Reauthorization Act strengthens research, observations, forecasting, and public communications related to extreme weather events, including hurricanes, tornadoes, tsunamis, coastal flooding, and storm surge. Also on this list are atmospheric rivers, which have hit California in unprecedented numbers and intensity over recent years. They dump trillions of gallons of water and have tragically resulted in dozens of deaths. The bill requires the establishment of an atmospheric rivers forecast improvement program to focus on this growing threat to life and property in the West. The bill will also help drive critical innovations. It will support the development of novel sensor technologies on diverse observation platforms, expand computational resources to aid forecasters, and strengthen subseasonal to seasonal forecasting capabilities. As experts have repeatedly confirmed to this committee, our most significant limitation in forecasting accuracy today is data assimilation. Importantly, this legislation will increase NOAA's investment in data assimilation through the creation of a program to test, advance, and implement data assimilation methods. As part of this program, NOAA will direct the creation of a new university-based data assimilation consortium to address critical research challenges and foster a data assimilation workforce. Finally, this bill finds the right balance in expanding NOAA's partnership with the growing commercial weather sector while maintaining a backbone of publicly owned observational capabilities and a capable workforce necessary to avoid any disruption of NOAA's forecasting capabilities. The National Weather Service's mission is the protection of life and property and the enhancement of the national economy through forecasts and warnings. This bill supports that mission. I look forward to working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to ensure that all of the activities authorized in the bill are funded and implemented as Congress intended in the coming years. I want to thank former Chairman Lucas as well as Chairman Babin for their continued partnership in carrying out the important work of this committee as reflected in this good bipartisan legislation. I want to thank the committee staff as well on both sides of the aisle for their years of hard work and collaboration. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Other members are invited to please submit your opening statements into the record. And so with that, consideration of H.R. 5089 pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 5089, the Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025. The clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 5089, a bill to improve the national oceanic and atmospheric.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Do any members wish to be recognized to speak on the underlying bill?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Ross?
I move to strike the last word.
Okay.
I'm pleased to speak in support of the Weather Act reauthorization, a vital piece of bipartisan legislation that underscores our shared commitment to maintaining a robust and effective National Weather Service. This bill makes clear that no matter our political differences, we all agree that safeguarding lives through accurate forecasting, sustained weather research funding, and timely alerts must remain a national priority. Unfortunately, the recent DOGE cuts threatened the very foundation of our weather infrastructure. These cuts were an assault on our federally funded weather system laboratories and on NOAA and on the dedicated public servants who have been laid off as a result. The impact is particularly devastating in states like Texas, New Mexico, and North Carolina, states that are still reeling from the recent deadly floods that tore through communities and took lives. Cutting critical resources now is simply unconscionable. I want to thank the Science, Space, and Technology Committee for including my amendment from last session that directly addresses the workforce crisis at the National Weather Service. This amendment establishes milestones, timelines, and service-level expectations to expedite hiring and onboarding of National Weather Service employees. Additionally, the Radar Gap Elimination Act, co-led with my North Carolina colleagues, Congressman Moore and Congressman Harrigan, is included in the underlying bill. It directs the National Weather Service to replace aging NextRad radar infrastructure and prioritize the deployment of phased array radar in locations that are more than 75 miles from existing radar coverage. Finally, I thank the committee for including my bill with Congressman Weber, the Precipitation Forecast Improvement Program Act, which was adopted last Congress as an amendment from my former North Carolina colleague, Congressman Jeff Jackson. This bipartisan solution establishes a program in NOAA to improve precipitation forecasts. The program must support research, development, and implementation of Earth system models, including precipitation extremes and related weather events. This bill and the broader Weather Act reauthorization are essential tools in helping to protect our communities, our agriculture, commerce, aviation, and so much more. I strongly support the underlying bill and commend the sponsors and urge my colleagues to vote for it and do the same. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. And now I'd like to recognize Representative McBride from Delaware.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to you and Ranking Member Lofgren for bringing us together to discuss the Weather Act Reauthorization Act. To put it plainly, this bill is vital. Severe weather events are intensifying in magnitude, severity, and frequency. Across the country, communities have been devastated by wildfires and hurricanes, and this legislation would make sure that we invest in cutting-edge forecasting, modeling, and emergency communications that will help protect lives and property across the country. Earlier this year, I helped to reintroduce the National Weather Service Communications Improvement Act, which is part of this bill and will modernize the National Weather Service's communication system to support speedy and reliable weather information. This update is overdue. and critical to making sure our first responders, meteorologists, and Americans have access to life-saving information during life-threatening weather events. This bill builds on our existing infrastructure and updates it for the challenges of today. It expands NOAA's capabilities, supports next-generation radar, and integrates social science to make sure warnings are not only accurate, but actionable. It empowers public-private partnerships and ensures farmers, government officials, experts, and communities have the data they need to make sure they have smart and swift decision-making capacity. I strongly support this reauthorization, but we must also be honest about what the Trump administration has done to gut and hamper our ability to adequately prepare our communities. This bipartisan legislation stands in sharp contrast to the approach taken by the Trump administration, one that has repeatedly undermined science and politicized the very institutions charged with keeping Americans safe. Under President Trump, scientific integrity is consistently attacked. Experts are sidelined. Data is manipulated with a swipe of a Sharpie or even ignored. This bill will help states like Delaware, which is the lowest lying state and at particular risk of severe weather events, by making sure our technology is up to date, our science is sound, and our forecasting is improved. It says clearly, we value science, we believe in facts, and we will invest in the tools and people who keep our communities safe. Forecasts save lives, but only if they are accurate, timely, and trusted. This legislation will help ensure that. I commend the bipartisan work of this committee that went into this bill, and I look forward to continuing to work with my colleagues across the aisle to make sure NOAA can meet its mission of protecting life and property in Delaware and across the country. Let's reaffirm our commitment to scientific integrity, emergency preparedness, and protecting the American people from the risks of extreme weather. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Fushi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Recognized.
I would first like to begin by commending my colleague, Congressman Miller, for his continued partnership and leadership in co-authoring H.R. 4141, Advanced Weather Model Computing Development Act, included in Section 108 of the Bipartisan Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025. This bipartisan common sense legislation seeks to ensure America's global leadership in the 21st century weather forecasting while simultaneously strengthening our emergency preparedness. It is no secret that the acceleration in climate change increasingly poses challenges to our communities, threatening the safety, security, and property of everyday Americans. And we are no stranger to this in my home state of North Carolina, as you just heard from my colleague, where disasters have repeatedly ravaged entire communities, leaving our cities and homes vulnerable to damage and destruction. As members of Congress, it is imperative that we properly equip our communities, first responders, and essential agencies with the necessary resources, safeguards, and technology to protect ourselves from environmental harm. I have witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of severe weather impacts in our neighborhoods. During August, I toured the aftermath of the Hillsborough Water Treatment Plant in Orange County, damaged by Tropical Storm Chantal. The widespread losses proved costly, both to our infrastructure as well as the livelihoods of our residents. This is just one example that further demonstrates the necessity for critical research, advanced weather forecasting programs, granular data acquisition, and better emergency communication efforts. In collaboration with the DOE, this bill will leverage emerging technologies, including artificial intelligence at NOAA, to improve weather model accuracy, expand cutting-edge research centers and programs, and establish sustainable initiatives for better emergency reporting and readiness. With this legislation, we can ensure our position at the forefront of weather and climate prediction and mitigation. Thank you again to Congressman Miller for your leadership on this bill. I am proud to join him in introducing the Advanced Weather Model Computing Development Act, which unanimously passed the House last Congress and has earned strong bipartisan support. I urge my fellow representatives to vote yes on the Bipartisan Weather Act, and I look forward to working on our continuing efforts towards innovative weather research and forecasting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. Is there any further discussion? Anybody? Hearing none, if there's no further discussion on the underlying bill, we will proceed with amendments in the order that they are listed on the roster. The first amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Fushi of North Carolina on behalf of Representative Stevens of Michigan. The clerk shall report the Stevens Amendment 088.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Ms. Stevens of Michigan.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Fushi of North Carolina for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to offer this amendment today on behalf of my good friend and colleague, Congresswoman Haley Stevens. Changing climate patterns are making tornadoes more frequent, more severe, more common at night, and increasingly outside the traditional tornado alley, yet NOAA still struggles to fully understand the science behind these changes and what emergency responders need to keep our communities safe. The Congresswoman's amendment advances our understanding of tornado formation and helps ensure we are taking the right steps to protect lives and property from emerging threats. Specifically, this amendment incorporates Congresswoman Stevens' Twister Act to expand and modernize NOAA's tornado research program with a focus on fast-moving systems, tornadoes forming outside traditional zones, and nighttime tornadoes. I urge my colleagues to support this common sense amendment, and I yield back.
I support the amendment, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Ms. O?
I support the amendment.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, the question is on adoption of Stevens Amendment 088. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Ranking Member Lofgren. The clerk shall report Lofgren Amendment number 9.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Ms. Lofgren of California.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Ranking Member Lofgren of California for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Mr. Chairman, we all know the importance of having reliable and high-quality weather forecasts. NOAA's weather satellites collect observations and data that underpin our National Weather Service forecasts and warnings that enable the agency to meet its mission to protect lives and property. This is an important federal function that we need to preserve, and the Weather Act we are marking up today ensures that the American people will continue to benefit from the reliability and assurance of NOAA's federal weather satellite system. Another important federal agency, NASA, plays a valuable role in managing the acquisition of these systems for NOAA. Some of us remember the NPOIS debacle, which showed us the need for clear roles and responsibilities. That program's failure is what led to the current partnership between NOAA and NASA and underscores the importance of maintaining their successful partnership. This amendment directs NOAA to continue leveraging NASA's expertise in the acquisition of current and future environmental satellites. The amendment also outlines NOAA's ongoing responsibilities to ensure its forecasts, warnings, and information remain reliable and authoritative. Mr. Chairman, I do understand that we still need to iron out the details of the text to ensure that our intent is understood. And I look forward to continuing our bipartisan work on that as this bill advances. And in anticipation of your cooperation and our working together, I withdraw my amendment and I yield back.
Thank you, and you have my word. We will work together on this. The amendment is now withdrawn. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Harrigan of North Carolina. The clerk shall report Harrigan Amendment 036.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Mr. Harrigan of North Carolina.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Harrigan of North Carolina for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all of my colleagues. The purpose of my amendment is to prevent NOAA from acquiring drones manufactured by foreign adversaries for their research purposes and to submit a report within 1 year detailing how they will comply with this prohibition. I'd like to give you just a little bit of background on this. Currently, right now, NOAA purchases most of its drones from a company called DJI. They are wholly owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And as we know, and as this committee has done very, very good work on a bipartisan basis this year, we have exposed where China has acted averse to our interests throughout our entire research university apparatus as well as our national laboratories. And I think it's foolish of us to think that China is only building out its drone manufacturing capabilities for purely commercial purposes. DJI is the #1 supplier of drones to NOAA according to their fiscal year 2023 Uncrewed Aircraft Systems report. And in this same report, NOAA mentions its use of drones designed and manufactured from German and American suppliers. NOAA is frustrated by this amendment, but after significant back and forth with the agency, we have concluded that there really is no reason for NOAA to oppose this amendment. We have entertained some of their requests to extend this prohibition for 5 years. It will not take effect until 2030, but they do have to deliver a report to us of how they're going to comply with this amendment, i.e. not purchasing drones from our foreign adversaries by this time next year. I think that this amendment is a reasonable middle ground that can enjoy broad bipartisan support. We understand already that other government agencies have been banned from purchasing Chinese drones for a long time, and I believe it is now time for NOAA to join that list. We cannot effectively deter our greatest adversary, which is China, while pumping millions of taxpayer dollars into an industry that inevitably will be weaponized against us. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harrigan. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Representative Lofgren.
I want to thank Mr. Harrigan for his amendment. However, I do have some concerns about it. I completely support the underlying effort to cease the use of Chinese drones, and I don't want the result to be negative in terms of impact to our health and safety, and I know you do not either. I'll just note the concern that you referenced that the Trump administration had about the potential impact. I appreciate that you've extended the deadline. We don't know whether, I mean, we need to have a domestic drone industry that we lack right now. We don't know for sure that we're going to have that done in the time frame here. And so I do have concern about this and wanted to note that, although I do very much understand the motivation behind the amendment and don't disagree with the motivation. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and, excuse me, I can't see your finger. The question is on the adoption of Harrigan Amendment 036. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Thank you. The next amendment on the roster is an amendment offered by Representative Self of Texas. The clerk shall report Self-Amendment 074, if you would, please.
Amendment to H.R. 5089 offered by Mr. Self of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Self of Texas for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Real simple amendment. If we are going to have an algae bloom and a hypoxia program, then we need to target these programs to the communities that are actually directly and most affected rather than the identity politics in the base text. It's as simple as that. If we're going to have the program, let's target it at the people who are affected, and I yield back.
Is there any further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman,
Ranking Member Lofgren.
I support the language that Mr. Self is adding here. Unfortunately, The amendment also strikes the underlying language, which I support, so I wanted to express that concern, and I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? There's no further discussion. The question is on adoption of self-amendment 074. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Okay. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Gillen of New York. The clerk shall report Gillen Amendment 046.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Ms. Gillen of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Gillen of New York for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Well, thank you, Chairman Babin, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren, for holding today's bipartisan markup. I am proud to support H.R. 5089, the Bipartisan Weather Act, which helps improve America's weather forecasting and strengthens emergency preparedness for coastal communities, including the South Shore of Long Island. My amendment will ensure that NOAA's Coastal Flooding and Storm Surge Forecast Improvement Program helps coastal communities respond to rip currents. Mr. Chairman, rip currents are powerful streams of water that can often move faster than 8 feet per second. Long Island has some of the most popular beaches in the country, and surprise rip currents can prove deadly. I am the proud mother of an ocean lifeguard, and his crew of lifeguards have often saved people from drowning in these rip currents. But just this past month, Hurricane Erin threatened Long Island, causing severe winds, rainfall, coastal erosion, and life-threatening rip currents. The National Weather Service provided important critical advisories throughout the hurricane. However, tragically, after the rip current advisory was lifted, 2 swimmers drowned in a fatal rip current in the waters off Jones Beach State Park. NOAA's Surf Zone Forecasting Program and National Rip Current Forecast Model, which predict the hourly probability of rip currents along U.S. beaches, have already saved countless lives and assisted our lifeguard and coastal community leaders in keeping beachgoers safe. This amendment will prioritize research into the use of innovative observation and modeling technology to forecast rip currents, and they will help our first responders, our lifeguards, our local leaders in saving lives. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, and I urge the adoption of this amendment.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, it's an
Yes, ma'am.
excellent amendment. I thank Ms. Gillen for offering it. Yield back.
You bet. Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
I have
sir.
some comments.
Yes, sir.
Well, thank you so much, and as someone from the state of Florida, I really appreciate my colleague putting this amendment forth. I think it's really important and will hopefully help to save lives. Mr. Chairman, I also want to express my support for the Weather Act reauthorization of 2025 and commend the bipartisan work that's gone into drafting this underlying bill. The Weather Act reauthorization before us today is a life-saving piece of legislation. Passing this bill means that our communities are better prepared for all different types of weather. In July of this year, I, alongside my colleague from Florida, Representative Daniel Webster, introduced the Fixing Gaps in Hurricane Preparedness Act. Our bipartisan piece of legislation is aimed at saving the lives of seniors, folks with disabilities, and non-English speakers during hurricanes. It instructs NOAA to evaluate people's level of preparedness in hurricane-prone areas, better understand how certain at-risk populations receive, interpret, and react to emergency notifications, and finally examines the unique risks to areas with large senior populations, including retirement communities before, during, and after a hurricane. This bill was inspired by the devastating national data and conversations with Central Floridians. They spoke of living in neighborhoods that quickly flood, confusing messaging from the media, and alerts that are usually in just English or Spanish, fears of being stranded because they're unable to drive, or not knowing what is more dangerous, a potentially inaccessible shelter or being trapped at home. While inspired by the needs of our constituents, our bill would help folks far beyond Florida as well. Hurricanes and tropical storms impact the entire Gulf and East Coast, make up 18 of our most populous states. California also faced a hurricane this year. Tropical systems can still kill as they move inland, and rain from tropical storms have killed dozens in Tennessee, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. When these storms come, people with disabilities must undergo evacuations at far greater rates than others, yet folks told me they feel like an afterthought when it comes to accommodations. High heat, humidity, worsening conditions like multiple sclerosis and cerebral palsy really make it so that way people with disabilities have a hard time evacuating during these storms. For seniors and those with disabilities, being stuck without electricity can mean death. Seniors are far much more likely to die during a hurricane as well. In fact, 2/3 or most of the fatalities during Hurricane Katrina in 2005, Hurricane Florence in 2018, and Hurricane Ian just a few years ago were over the age of 60 years old. The research and evaluation this amendment requires will save lives, reduce fear, and help our constituents, first responders, and medical professionals better prepare for hurricanes. I'm pleased to see that the provisions of this bill have been incorporated into the underlying text of the long overdue Weather Act, and I ask my colleagues to support this bipartisan piece of legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further discussion on the amendment, please? Hearing none, the question is on the adoption of Gillen Amendment 046. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered also by Representative Gillen of New York. Clerk shall report Gillen Amendment 049.
Amendment to H.R. 5089 offered by Ms. Gillen of New York.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Gillen of New York for 5 minutes to explain her amendment.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Chairman. Many Americans may not realize that one of the reasons our airspace is safe is because of the work of the dedicated and talented aviation meteorologists with the National Weather Service. These National Weather Service meteorologists, known as Center Weather Service Units, are on hand to provide decision support services to the FAA for any weather event that may impact air traffic operations and flight safety. However, last month, the GAO found that the number of active meteorologists had fallen to 69 out of the 90 available staff positions. Mr. Chairman, it is imperative that this committee work on a bipartisan basis to ensure that aviation meteorologists have the support that they need to keep America's air travelers safe. My amendment would ensure that in future staffing agreements between the NWS and the FAA, each of the Central Weather Service units is adequately staffed based on guidance provided by the director of the NWS. Mr. Chairman, my district on Long Island is home to the New York airspace, one of the busiest in our country. I am committed to working on a bipartisan basis to modernize our air traffic system and keep our passengers safe. This amendment is crucial to prevent delays and ensures our country's travelers are safe and on time. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you again for holding this bipartisan markup, and I urge all members of this committee to support the adoption of this amendment and passage of the underlying bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman, I would just like to thank Ms. Gillen for this amendment. For those of us in Congress who fly across the country twice a week, we're hoping that the weather events that might endanger the flights are in fact dealt with adequately, and this is an important amendment. I yield back.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to support the amendment as well. My constituents in California's 27th District understand this new extreme weather threat all too well. Wildfires, heat waves, atmospheric river events, they shape the daily experiences of residents across the San Fernando, Santa Clarita, and Antelope Valley. But they don't have to. With sufficient prediction, research, and response investments, we can mitigate the effects of extreme weather. This amendment and this bill would do exactly that. It's a clear example of the type of legislation I came to Congress to advance and that I'm proud to be a co-sponsor of today. So thank you so much, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Whitesides. Any further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, the question is on adoption of Gillen Amendment 049. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Bonamici of Oregon. The clerk shall report the Bonamici Amendment 047.
Amendment to H.R. 5089 offered by Ms. Bonamici of Oregon.
The The amendment is considered as read.
Mr. Chairman, I reserve a point of order against the amendment.
Okay, a point of order has been reserved, and I now recognize Ranking Member Lofgren to speak 5 minutes to explain this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bonamici is in a competing markup in the Education Committee, so I am offering this amendment in her behalf. For many of her constituents, extreme weather directly affects their safety, livelihoods, and communities. Northwest Oregon usually sees summer highs in the 80s. It's a temperate climate. The Columbia River and Pacific Ocean help keep it temperate. However, in 2021, Northwest Oregon experienced temperatures reaching 116 degrees. That type of heat overwhelms the brain, strains the heart, chokes the lungs. And I will say that extreme heat is not limited to Oregon. That is happening around the United States, certainly in California. The amendment would insert provisions from the Preventing Heat Illness and Deaths Act, which is led by Ms. Bonamici and Senator Markey in the Senate. It would authorize the National Integrated Heat Health Information System within NOAA and create an interagency committee to direct federal agencies to align their efforts to predict, communicate, and respond to extreme heat events. This isn't just a meteorological issue, it is a public health issue. Now, this language was in the earlier pre-conference version of the Weather Act, and I'm hopeful that as we proceed with this bill, we'll be able to get this provision included as it has been in the past. Based on our bipartisan effort and the bipartisan effort to address this issue, I would like to note that I look forward to working with you, Mr. Chairman, other members of the committee. I would ask permission, unanimous consent to withdraw this amendment, knowing that we have more work to do together on a bipartisan basis. And with that, I would yield back.
Absolutely. The amendment is then withdrawn. Thank you. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Obernolte of California on behalf of Representative Franklin of Florida. The clerk shall report Franklin Amendment 017.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Mr. Franklin of Florida.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I now recognize Representative Obernolte of California for 5 minutes to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am honored to offer this amendment on behalf of our colleague, Representative Franklin. This amendment will direct NOAA, in partnership with other federal agencies, academia, and the private sector, to expand the use of AI in weather, water, and space weather forecasting. The goal of the amendment is to make the NOAA a leader in integrating AI into U.S. weather forecasting, ensuring better data sets, models, and communications tools, foster innovation with our partners, safeguard data from foreign adversaries, and balance AI advances with continued support for traditional forecasting methods. This amendment is especially timely for states like my own, California, and in Florida, because the hurricane and atmospheric river seasons are now upon us. This amendment specifically directs NOAA to develop and implement AI forecasting models for extreme weather, which will eventually help to protect lives, homes, and communities across our country. Further, it will ensure the federal government can anticipate and respond to disasters with greater speed and accuracy. Lastly, I'd like to note for the record that this language was previously included in the original Weather Act reauthorization that our committee had planned to mark up earlier this year. I urge my colleagues to adopt this amendment and respectfully ask for your support. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Is there further discussion on this amendment?
Mr. Chairman, we think this is a good amendment and yield back.
Okay, thank you very much. Any further discussion on this? Okay, if there's no further discussion, the question is on the adoption of Franklin Amendment 017. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The next amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by Representative Amo of Rhode Island. The clerk shall report Amo Amendment 043.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Mr. Amo of Rhode Island.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read. I recognize Representative Amo of Rhode Island for 5 minutes to explain his amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member Lofgren. Reliable and publicly accessible ocean data forms the foundation of the extreme weather warnings and climate projections the American people need to protect their lives, livelihoods, and property. Our ocean data forms the bedrock of countless private businesses, from insurance to energy to tourism to shipping. Our government has long supported ocean observation networks. The data we produce is a vital part of our weather forecasting ecosystem. Without this reliable and public data infrastructure, the foundation will crumble. Lives will be lost, extreme weather warnings will go unsent, and coastal states like Rhode Island will be unprepared. Communities will be crushed, and businesses will struggle. That's why I'm offering a simple amendment to direct the Commerce Department to brief Congress on the status of our ocean observation networks and programs, identify gaps, and create a plan to address them. Protecting the integrity of our ocean observation networks protects the integrity of our ocean data, which improves the accuracy of our weather forecasting models. It's a win, win, win. I urge you to support my common sense amendment. I yield back.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, the question now is on the adoption of AMO Amendment 043. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The last amendment on the roster is the amendment offered by the chair. The clerk shall report Babin Amendment 17.
Amendment to H.R. 5089, offered by Mr. Babin of Texas.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read, and I recognize myself for 5 minutes to explain the amendment. I'm pleased to offer this amendment, legislation that the ranking member and I introduced earlier this Congress, titled the Fog Observations and Geographic Forecasting Act. Last February, the Port of Houston, which I represent, experienced significant traffic disruptions in and out of the port on 14 separate days due to fog. The weather conditions reduced visibility to such an extent that one of America's busiest ports was brought to a complete standstill. This disruption hindered shipments, choked supply chains, and cost our economy billions of dollars. Year after year, fog-related closures cause ripple effects across our supply chain, delaying goods, driving up costs, and weakening our economic resilience. This amendment directs NOAA to conduct a targeted project to strengthen forecasts of coastal marine fog. This will safeguard both lives and livelihoods by enhancing vessel safety and mitigating the economic effects of coastal marine fog events in 5 critical ways. Number one, it increases the number of marine-based observations through both existing government instruments and commercially obtained data. Number two, advances the geographic coverage and accuracy of marine fog modeling. 3, improves the communication of marine fog advisories by NOAA. 4, better conveys the risks posed by hazardous marine fog events. And last, 5, provides decision support services for risk managers and for port operators. The bill also requires the NOAA administrator to develop a plan that outlines specific research, development, and technology transfer activities, as well as the necessary resources and timelines. The Fog Forecasting Act emphasizes the need for a targeted response to the challenges posed by coastal marine fog. It conveys Congress's intention that a dedicated effort to enhance fog forecasting is not only desirable but also highly beneficial for the operations of our nation's ports. I encourage my colleagues to support this effective, focused solution that prioritizes safety, economic strength, and common sense. And I will yield back. Is there any further discussion on this
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank you for this amendment. Fog is one of the most difficult weather phenomena to forecast, and this amendment will, in fact, strengthen our ability to accurately predict fog formation. I was happy to co-sponsor your bill, Mr. Chairman, and I'm glad to see it incorporated in this overarching bill, and I urge my colleagues to support the amendment. I thank you and yield back.
And I thank you for your co-sponsorship as well, Ms. Lofgren. Any further discussion on this amendment? Hearing none, The question is on the adoption of Babin Amendment 017. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. Okay. There were no other amendments pre-filed for this bill. Are there any further amendments? Hearing none,
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
right here.
Yeah, Mr. Webster.
Thank you. I would assume if this bill passes and goes to the House and passes, Senate goes to the President, one of the President's major policies in here is overlooked. So I see the Gulf of Mexico is listed here several times, and it's not the Gulf of Mexico, it's the Gulf of America. And I'm just wondering if we should change that.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we rename it the Gulf of Texas. I'm just saying.
I think there is a problem, if I'm not mistaken, that this is not in the jurisdiction of this committee. I think it's under the jurisdiction of someone else.
Well, the language that I was looking at, Gulf of Mexico was stricken from the bill and then added back in. And so we're making a mistake, I think, and not doing something about it.
I would have to.
Mr. Chairman?
I was told about this yesterday, Mr. Webster, and I'm with you. You know, I think it's the name change to the Gulf of America is a proper thing to do, but the problem is this is under the jurisdiction of the Natural Resources Committee. That's what I was told.
But we did touch the language. And so that nobody said anything about that amendment. There was in this bill, there's a striking of the Atlantic Ocean, including Caribbean and the Gulf of Mexico are all determined, quote. And then we insert back some other names, including the Gulf of Mexico.
It's also my understanding that in this particular bill, it was not changed either way.
Chairman, may I be recognized?
Yes,
Sorry.
Mr. Max.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chairman. It's my understanding, we all agree with you that at least, here that it should be Gulf of America, but the legislation is pending right now, and it hasn't had the president's wet ink on it. The executive branch can call it whatever they would like, right? And they have the ability to do so by the executive order that he has signed. But the president has not signed the actual piece of legislation by Ms. Green that changed the name officially from the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Once that signature is wet and once that is done, then we will have the jurisdiction on this committee to move forward calling it the Gulf of America. That's the big hang-up, and I know it's frustrating, and I had to get the education behind it too, but we're kind of locked into where we are. So I yield back, Chairman.
That was my understanding as well. Thank you, Mr. Miller. Let's see. Okay, a reporting quorum being present, I move that the committee report H.R. 5089, the Weather Act Reauthorization Act of 2025, is amended to the House with the recommendation that the bill be favorably approved. The question is on favorably reporting H.R. 5089 is amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the bill as amended is ordered favorably reported without objection. The motion to consider is laid on the table. All right, without objection, I ask that the staff be authorized to make any necessary technical and conforming changes to these bills. So ordered. Yeah, it's good. I ask unanimous consent, before you leave, folks, before you leave, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter of support from Representative Lucas of Oklahoma for H.R. 5089, the Weather Act Reauthorization Act, and without objection, so ordered. Thank everybody. Oh, I got more. Without objection, I ask that the staff, members will have 2 calendar days to submit supplemental, minority, or additional views on this measures. No further business before the committee. The committee stands adjourned. Okay.